Okay, and following that, Christon asks, hey Manley, I have two topics that may or may not be worthy of please hold for Dave Sim conversation. Dave, last month you spoke about attending independent comic shows. I would assume with your strong indie book influence, you have had significant interactions with many other independent comic book creators. Of these creators, who has shown you the most support over your career? Just off the top of my head, I would have to say Steve Bissett, particularly in terms of following along with everything that I was saying about creators' rights and acknowledging in his situation of having worked at DC on Swamp Thing. And when I would be talking to him, either on the phone or in person, and I would say, this is probably what's going to happen. And then it happened. Steve Bissett was one of those rare people who doesn't default into hallucinatory settings. If Dave Sim told him something was going to happen and it happened, then Steve Bissett goes, okay, I was wrong, Dave Sim was right. If that keeps happening this way, and it kept happening that way, then Steve Bissett gradually changed his own perceptions to dovetail with reality. And consequently, in terms of being simpatico with other indie comic book creators, with Steve Bissett, when I was talking to him, the lights were on and somebody was home. Most of the other creators, it's, I'll keep saying these things. I'll do what I can do to try and help you and try and keep you from going in what I consider wrong directions for these reasons. The lights weren't on and nobody was home. Their priorities were somewhere else, or a number of somewhere else's. Consequently, I've always appreciated Bissett in that sense because he did admit that he was wrong when he was wrong. He did assert when he was right when he was right, but he also never. It wasn't baby out with the bathwater when Dave Sim got accused of being a misogynist. Steve Bissett was one of the few people who didn't say, gee, I thought Dave Sim was, a really helpful guy and really doing good things and always talking from an ethical standpoint and always talking about the problems that ethics can present if you get attached to something that you think is ethical that isn't actually ethical. That didn't change after that point. And Steve Bissett still talks about me and still talks about my work. Talking about Strange Death of Alex Raymond and saying, I don't want to hear from any of you about other things having to do with Dave Sim's opinions or what Dave Sim thinks. Here's what I got to say about Strange Death of Alex Raymond. And that's rare as hen's teeth in the comic book field, where virtually everyone else. You mentioned Kevin Eastman. Kevin Eastman was in that category as well. Never changed his opinion about Dave Sim. No matter what people decided, we all have to think about Dave Sim. So I would put Kevin Eastman and Steve Bissett at the top of that list in terms of consistency, because I think that's a key point of integrity. If you change your mind about somebody because of what other people have suddenly said about them, then that's not integrity. That brings us to Rudyard Kipling's if you can keep your head, well, all about you are losing theirs. Very, very rare that happens. Most people go Bob Burton's, this calls for an emergency. Everybody's freaking out about Dave Sim. Dave Sim has turned out to be completely evil. I thought Dave Sim was great, but I'm never going to admit that again. Dave Sim is evil. Dave Sim is evil. Please don't throw me out of the club. That kind of thing is very, 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 very common in the Marxist-feminist dictatorship. I am hoping that other creators have also currently remained supportive. Very, very possibly. I don't hear from anybody, but cartoonists don't really hear from other cartoonists. I haven't really talked to Steve Bissett since started Cerebus in Hell with a question mark and got his help promoting it. When Kevin Eastman and I had our back and forths during the T8 Kickstarter, I hadn't talked to Kevin on the phone for 15 years, 20 years. I would leave him messages occasionally, and he's Kevin Eastman. It's like he's up to his eyeballs in people who just want to touch base. You find out once you're in your 50s, and I'm now in my 60s, that no, you're on your own. Everybody lives their own life and makes their own choices and their own decisions. And that's true for me, and that's true for Steve Bissett, and that's true for Kevin Eastman. We all have the good faith to be in touch with people that we would like to stay in touch with. But you get older, you're slowing down, you still got to put a roof over your head, you still have to put food on the table. And that becomes more of a priority, far more of a priority than when you were in your 20s. And then Christon asked, also, who is your favorite independent character, story, and creator? Probably in the broadest sense, in terms of these are always at the top of my list and have been since I first encountered their work. Bon Bodet's The Man, One Shot Underground, which I read probably back in first time 1970s. I think he created it in 1967, and it's still a very, very solid piece of work. So Bon Bodet as the creator, The Man as a character, and The Man as a story. Jeff Jones' Idol is in that same category. I was a huge Idol fan when I first encountered it in National Lampoon Funny Pages in the 1970s. And still to this day, some of my favorite work, although apart from Idol herself, most of the characters don't have names. And each one of them is a story. Each single page, which is a remarkable achievement in and of itself, that this story is only 5 panels long, 6 panels long, and it's one of my favorite comic book stories. I would put it up against any number of graphic novels. Aristotle. It's like beautifully lettered first panel that just says Aristotle, and then the girl's walking into the panel and goes, barrels, and there's 2 barrels, and she looks at the barrels and she opens up the top of the one and goes, nothing in this one, and then walks away. And I go, that's a perfect distillation of but insulting point of view on Aristotle. But you couldn't replace that in terms of if you had to refute somebody, in this case probably Steve Ditko, and Ayn Rand by way of Aristotle. Barrels, nothing in this one, and then walk away from it. Brilliant, dry material. And speaking of Steve Ditko, he would be in that category. Favorite independent character, Mr. A, or pretty much any character that Ditko did after DC, after working at Marvel and DC and Charlton. Story, I would take all of the Mr. A stories as a cumulative narrative, and creator. Nobody else could do Mr. A than Steve Ditko, and you would be a fool to try. And that's Christon's first question, and thank you, Christon. It's that time of year where now the prayer time is at 7:45, so I'm going to go down and do a prayer time, and then we will move on to Christon's number 2.
Okay.
Talk to you in a little while, Matt.
Talk to you in a little while, Dave.
Bye-bye.